All right, welcome everyone to our presentation about how to become a trusted advisor. My name is Andrew Knightlick. I'm a director and founder of the Center for Executive Coaching. Big agenda today. This is going to be a lot of content. This is not an infomercial for the Center for Executive Coaching, but welcome to our existing members of the Center for Executive Coaching, and welcome to any prospective members who are interested in executive coaching certification. What we're going to cover today is one of the tracks that we cover in our program, which is how to attract clients, how to build a practice, whether you're an internal or an external coach. It's really important to know how to do this. This is just a piece of the content we give you. Of course, the other track is how to be a great executive coach. You're not going to get a lot of clients or have a lot of referrals if you don't do that as well. So the purpose for those of you who are prospective members is to just get a sense of what sets us apart, the kind of content we offer, and to make a decision about whether you want to reach out, and we can talk about whether there's a fit or not for you. So this is all about how to be a trusted advisor, not just a commodity coach, right? There's 50,000 coaches who have designations from the International Coaching Federation. I know one organization that claims to have a list in the 6 figures of people interested in coaching. So if you're going to win in this market and set yourself apart, it makes a lot of sense to have the highest strategic ground with your clients, and that's by being a trusted advisor. And that's the purpose of today's presentation. Okay. First, a couple of introductions. I like to introduce the Center for Executive Coaching based on what our members tell us. You can read 3 on the screen. Most recently, I've been training advisors in 2 of the world's leading executive advisory and search companies. You would know their names. And in one case, we trained 15 of their senior consultants, at the partner level. And they surveyed, the company surveyed the participants after the training, and 100% said they'd recommend the training to others, which I thought was really high praise. And at the other, the managing partner who hired us recently sent me an email saying that this was a great investment, and they were super delighted that they invested in coach training with the Center for Executive Coaching. So that's the type of testimonials we're looking for, and the types of experiences we want people who join us to have. We specialize in working with already successful professionals who have a history of developing others, mentoring others. It's a part of what you've really enjoyed doing, and now coaching is calling to you, whether you want to add it to your skill set as a leader, whether you want to be an external coach who sets up a practice of your own, whether you want to be an internal coach. And again, we don't cater to everybody. We really work well with people who have a track record of success, whether it's your educational credentials, the leadership that you've demonstrated in your work, and so on. Okay, so that's who we are. We're known for practical, results-driven approaches that work in the real world, not fluffy life coaching stuff, not pseudoscience, not a bunch of jargon, just plain speaking how to help clients be better and get results. Okay, it would be good that we define coaching. Here you see a Venn diagram of coaching, therapy, and consulting. There's overlap among them. I was a consultant before I was a coach. And what I found was when clients actually implemented my advice or the advice of our firm, it was because we helped them often with a coaching approach to be better implementers. Similarly, therapists, although they focus on the emotional past, often ask great questions that could equally serve in a coaching role as well, especially in the realms of positive psychology, cognitive behavioral psychology. But coaching is really, you can see the definitions here. For us, it's a series of high impact conversations that enables already successful professionals to generate sustained improvements in performance, right? So sustained results. The ICF defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Okay, so that's what coaching is. Let me just give you a quick overview of the marketplace and then jump into the actual content. One way to do this would be to start with my own story, right? I was a management consultant for a long time, I got into coaching when clients started telling me that they already knew the answers to the analyses we did. And I'd say to them, so, why? Why'd you hire us? And their answer was, I just need a sounding board. I need someone I can talk to who can help me implement the tough changes we have to make and help me with the tough decisions, because so many people are after me. I need a safe space to talk about leadership. And so my very first client was nothing. I mean, this was like 22 years ago. I think I got $1,500 working with the executive director and board of a tiny nonprofit, maybe a $500,000 budget. I started working with bigger and bigger nonprofits, eventually getting into an organization with an $80 million budget. At the same time, I started working with technology CEOs, particularly those who had the founders of firms that were somewhere between 10 million and 50 million, just south of San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And usually their issue was, I love technology, but I'm not getting enough out of my team. So that was like 22, 23, 24 years ago now. My most recent 3 clients, all of them the same issue, a leader in a new role, all of them in companies that are growing, all of them in companies that have somewhere between 250 million and 750 million in revenue, with aspirations to get beyond the $1 billion mark. One's an interim president of a publicly traded company who wants the word interim removed from his name. One's a 32-year-old who's taking over a business from his dad, and the other's moving into a really amazing role with a major consulting firm. Okay, so those are just examples, but coaching has been proven. It's a thing now. It's a market. It's a proven approach to professional development. It continues to grow. You can go to the International Coaching Federation to see some of the studies they've either commissioned or accumulated that show a return on investment of coaching. Well over half of the Fortune 500 companies, and that's an old statistic, I'll bet it's up to 75 or 80% now, rely on coaching as a standard professional development tool. Not to mention millions of organizations that aren't in the Fortune 500 level. Okay, so it continues to be a great time to get in. I think after the pandemic, we're seeing even more growth just because organizations are realizing they need to create a strong culture to attract and retain top talent. So you can coach. When I say executive coaching here in this presentation, you can coach leaders at all levels. I'm really talking about leadership. Could be senior leaders, middle managers, up and coming talent, first-time managers, career transitions, entrepreneurs, even solo professionals at all types of organizations, right? We're not just talking about Fortune 500s, talking about anything from large to mid-size to tiny non-for and nonprofits, nonprofits of all sizes, federal, state, and local government, educational institutions, whether it's K through 12 or universities, and again, solo professionals. And just about any situation, right? What I've noticed is that the situations that are in demand tend to change depending on the economy and what's going on in the world, but there's always demand for coaching. Anything from influencing with more impact, executing on a professional development plan, eliminating a behavioral blind spot, creating a stronger culture, developing a pipeline of leaders. There's a lot today about overwhelm. And as I said, my last 3, without any marketing, are all about succeeding in a new role, which is really interesting. And there's almost unlimited niches, right? Technology, scientific, and clinical leaders. That is a perpetual source or area to coach people in, right? Particularly in healthcare. Healthcare struggles all the time. The language changes, the crises change, but there's always need for coaching leaders and clinicians in healthcare, let alone other scientific and technology fields. Professional service firms, often they're funny because they often promote best practices in leadership, but once you get in there, you'll find they are often acting like dysfunctional families and need a lot of coaching. Success in a new role, growing businesses is a really fun niche, especially family businesses. Financial services has a lot of need for coaching now, especially with fintech developing and challenging a lot of legacy institutions. Nonprofits have a lot of passionate people who might not have leadership experience. Military leaders is always huge. In fact, the military is investing in coaching in a big way. We're training a lot of military leaders, everything from admirals and generals to some frontline leaders, teams, high potentials, and change. Okay. So now we can get into talking about what it means to be a trusted advisor. Okay. You want to be more than a commodity coach. There's plenty of coach training programs out there that will teach you to be a commodity coach. And so let's just compare where most coaches are and where the trusted advisor is. And then let's talk about how to get there, right? If you were to survey most coaches, you'll see they position themselves wrong. They're selling coaching as a feature. Like, who needs a coach? Here's why you should get a coach. It's really hard to sell a feature versus values, benefits, and results. You don't want to be a commodity. The sales process for most coaches is long, and it's often long in order to sell a short engagement to a complex set of decision makers. You don't want to do that. The market is such that you're competing with thousands plus the low-cost coaching brokers, not to mention the fact that you probably have to go to what one of my clients called a coaching bake-off, where you're competing, even if you know the client that you're going to coach, the person you're going to coach, they still want to interview a few coaches first. Your income is constrained because you're typically earning a commodity rate, because that's how you're positioning yourself. If I were going to give a metaphor for what this feels like, it feels like being on a treadmill. You're just always running, always chasing clients for short engagements that are usually one and done. And so, of course, it feels unsatisfying and stressful. A few, and this is our purpose, is to train you to be not just a coach, but a trusted advisor. It's just much more fulfilling with much less effort. Here, you're positioning yourself with a strong brand. You're memorable. You stand out. You're the first person people call when they have a need. More importantly, you don't need a lot of clients. Once you get a client, you're in their inner circle, right? You have long-term relationships, so you're not a one and done coach. You're not on a treadmill. The sales process is much easier because you have instant access to the decision maker, who often has a larger budget. And the sales process is really quick. They just say, hey, we'd like you to do this now. And it's a market where commodity coaches, artificial intelligence, and the low-cost brokers don't play. They can't. It's too high end. It's too personalized. Your income is much better. You're going to earn a lot more. Like, I don't charge an hourly rate. I charge by the engagement, and I charge at the top of the market. You can too. Marketing takes a lot less time because you have long-term relationships. If you're not working with a client, but you're known, they'll call you first when they have a specific need. I'll show you what you have to do to make that happen. If they do know you, the metaphor is more like dominoes, where, you know how you line up those dominoes? Maybe you did this when you were a kid and you put them in different patterns. You just push over one and all these other dominoes fall. Dominoes meaning you get referrals, you get additional work. So it's just more fulfilling. The problem is most coaches never get here, right? And so I want to talk to you about what it takes. So let's just talk about a hierarchy here. Like, what is a trusted advisor? What are other words you might hear? If you look at this triangle, you'll see maybe 4 types of outside professionals. And you'll see that the fees go up as you approach trusted advisor status, and the time spent attracting business goes down, right? The worst is a commodity vendor. These are people who are on lists to receive RFPs. I never respond to RFPs except if I work with my client to write them because they have to, and I always win them, right? That's what a trusted advisor does. A commodity vendor responds to these things, and you're never going to win. A preferred vendor is a step higher, but you're still a vendor. A credible expert / solution provider is pretty good, right? This means you're credible, you can get in the door, but to really develop those long-term relationships and be in the inner circle, you want to be what's called a trusted advisor. You want that relationship of trust. By the way, please never, ever put the word trusted advisor on your website. You don't declare that you're a trusted advisor. Your clients tell you you're a trusted advisor. You earn the right. It cracks me up when I see a coach's website that says, we're a trusted advisor to our clients. Okay, if you say so, but it's really the clients who have to say that. You earn the right. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the International Coaching Federation, right? Again, 50,000 coaches have received their designations. They're changing everything, right? It used to be an ACTP. Soon it will be level 2. Regardless, I think it's reached a point where the ICF core competencies, as important as they are, I think I'd call them necessary, but not sufficient. And in some cases, not even necessary. They certainly do not include a lot of the skills that trusted advisors have. And so I just want you to know that if you join a coach training program, you have to make sure they take you well beyond the ICF core competencies, or else you're going to find yourself on the left side of the screen that we talked about before, where you're set up as a commodity. You're selling hourly coaching for hourly rates for a short time. And it isn't a lot of fun. So when you join us, our goal for you and the types of people we seek are the ones who want to be among the top coaches worldwide, who want to be in the top 5%, right? I'm looking for people who, like, if you go to a lot of coach training programs, you almost never hear the word client, results, or value. What we're all about is understanding what the client wants, how they define value, and delivering unmatched value and significant measurable results for clients while feeling great about it, while feeling confident and being competent in what you do. We want you to be the go-to professional and earn that trusted advisor status. So let's talk about how to do it. Okay, I'm going to share with you, this is essentially the agenda of steps it takes to become a trusted advisor. So let me get to that, and then we'll stop every once in a while and I'll take any questions that you might have, okay? So the first step is how you position yourself. If you go to most coaches' websites, they're disappointing, to say the least. If you look at how most coaches describe themselves on LinkedIn, they're not especially compelling or inspiring. When you join us, we're going to show you how to change that. And the key is to be known for something. There's thousands and thousands of coaches who say, I'm a leadership coach. I came from this school. I did this. It's all about them. That's not how you get clients. The way to get clients is to choose a unique position in the market. You don't even have to talk about coaching. I want to make sure you're clear about that. You don't even start by talking about coaching. And the reason is, for instance, if my sink is clogged, I already know I'm going to call a plumber, right? I connect clogged sink pipes with a plumber, but executives don't think that way. They don't connect, I need to be a better leader or something like that with a coach. That connection's not there, but they do understand that they have a problem and they need someone who can solve that problem. So step one is to figure out a little bit of algebra. You see it on the screen. Something like I help X to get Y, where X is a very specific type of person you help, and Y is the problem you solve for them, or the benefits you give them, or the results you get. Right? Like I help executive directors of leading nonprofits to engage and motivate their employees and volunteers. That's specific, and it tells prospective clients what I can do for them. It also helps me because now I know where to go to give speeches, right? I see one of you in the chat said, how do you break into the nonprofit world? The way I did it was giving talks about specific problems that nonprofit leaders had and how I helped to solve them. So at the end of those talks, people would come up to me. They felt like they knew me, and they'd say, I'd love to talk to you more about how you can help us. Another way is X works with me when they struggle with whatever. Again, my second niche was technology entrepreneurs. And when people ask me what I do, I could say something like technology entrepreneurs work with me when they're not getting enough productivity out of their teams. And as a result, they can't scale their businesses quickly enough. Or healthcare leaders reach out to me when they're struggling with variance in performance by their nurse managers. Okay, you see how different this is? Not even mentioning coaching. I'm not mentioning that I'm a commodity. I'm setting myself up as an expert, as somebody who knows how to solve a problem that the client cares about. Clients don't care about you. They don't care that you're a coach. They care about problems that they have. And it's important, if you're going to get into this field, that you understand that. You could also do, I love, like, my favorite brand for a coach is a guy named Mark Pittman. He's the fundraising coach. Everyone knows to call him when they have a fundraising need. He speaks everywhere. He has a book. He does free videos. He has a ton of resources. And I love that. The something coach is a great way to brand yourself as well. So that's step one. Choose a unique position in the market. You choose your space. Choose where you're going to dominate. Okay. Let's keep going. Two, I'm going to suggest that instead of establishing yourself as a coach, you establish yourself as an expert. Okay. One of the problems with coaching and how it's perceived in the market is that a lot of people say, a lot of leaders will say, well, the problem with coaching is they have no substance. All they do is ask a bunch of questions that go around in a circle. And you want to avoid that trap. The way to avoid it is by establishing yourself as an expert. And it's actually quite easy to do. For instance, if you have a target market, as we just discussed, if you know who your X is, and you were simply to interview 8 to 12 decision makers in that market about a problem they face, and use that information to create some content, you could set yourself up very quickly as an expert, right? You can join an association or volunteer for one. You can reach out to people on LinkedIn. There's even a site you can go to that reporters go to when they're looking for people to interview. It's just a great way to open doors without coming across as a salesperson or being spammy. I've done a number of these. Some of these have turned into books. And you don't need to do everything you see on the right. You just need one thing. Like, a great place to start would be just a 3-page executive brief about what you found. And then you can repurpose it. You could do white papers, turn it into a speech, do videos, LinkedIn posts, 1-page how-to guides, ebooks, training programs, assessments. You could create a little bit of a model or a framework that you present graphically, which is what best-selling authors do. Right, you can see like Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. He has that triangle. Stephen Covey had the 2 inverse triangles in a circle. Stuff like that. You want to establish yourself as an expert. Okay. If in doubt, just pick one thing. I started before the internet, and it was a blessing that I did. Right, because what it meant was I could just do one interview. I created one 10-page paper. And I just went around and shared it with people, starting with the people who were kind enough to let me interview them. Some of them hired me. And then I got asked to do a speech about the paper I had written. Some of those people wanted to work with me. Okay. So step 1, position yourself. Step 2, establish yourself as an expert. Step 3, build a strong power base of professional relationships. You see 2 images here. And these images, although they're mixed metaphors, I think they capture nicely what you want to think about. The one on the left is what we might call very healthy rapids. Think of this as, instead of what it is, as your opportunity flow, right? I love the metaphor of healthy rapids for opportunity flow. Opportunity flow means how many opportunities are being sent to you through people in your network. The whole point of having a network of professional relationships, sometimes called power base, is that these people know you and they think of you first when they have a need, just as you're helping them. And so instead of a raft floating down the river, think of opportunities and think of yourself at the bank of this river, right? A successful professional, someone on the way to being a trusted advisor, has rapids that look like what you see on the left. A commodity coach, you might think their network of professional relationships, their opportunity flow looks more like a stagnant puddle in a parking lot. You want to go from stagnant puddle to something like this. When I first started, I found a few people that knew me, saw me as credible, and were willing to send me work. They were complimentary professionals. And so my opportunity flow started to pick up nicely until clients were my opportunity flow. Anyone know what the phone on the right is? You remember this from a late 1960s television show? It's a good trivia question. The bat phone. Rocco got it. Thank you. That's exactly right. And I love that as a metaphor. Do you remember that campy show with Adam West and Burt Ward? Batman, in stately Wayne Manor, could pick up that phone anytime and reach Commissioner Gordon, and vice versa. Commissioner Gordon could reach Batman. You want the equivalent of a bat phone with the most important people, or at least the decision makers in your target market. You want to be able to pick up the phone and call people and have them take your call and talk to them. They don't feel like you're selling them anything. You're trusted. You're part of the network where everybody knows we're helping each other. I love this metaphor, the bat phone. I always think about, like, what's my one call away power base? You know, how many people can I call who could raise $500,000 with one phone call? How many heads of associations that I serve can I pick up the phone and call? How many CEOs in my target market can I call and they'll take my call? It's a really important metaphor. Again, I'll take questions soon. I see some hands up. Let me do one more. Let me just walk you through this, though. This is really important. Like, I'm a super introvert. One of the assessments we'll introduce you to in the Center for Executive Coaching, actually a couple of them have a scale of sociability. It's a very common trait that we look at with clients. I'm off the charts. I'm on the far left of the bell curve of sociability, right? I'm a super introvert. And so a lot of you are too. And the question is, so what do you do if you're an introvert and or you have no network? You know, step one, start where you are. In our program, we have a couple of exercises that help you think about who you really do know. And a lot of people find that they know a lot of people, they're just not leveraging them. And a lot of people haven't really been in touch with folks since you graduated from school or from different companies. There's actually a lot of people you know who are successful. And with a little bit of work, you can rekindle those relationships. And so the goal is to start having networking meetings. It's one of the best ways to get business, but it really only works if you have a I help X to get Y. If, you know, when I first started for 6 months, I got no clients because all I was doing was telling people how smart I was and how I came from a consulting firm and a really good business school. And, you know, who do they know who's a leader that might want coaching or consulting? And it didn't work. But once I could tell people, hey, I work with leaders in the nonprofit field. Here's 3 ways I help them. You know, do you mind sharing with me anyone you know who's on a board or running a nonprofit? Now I could get introductions and I could build my network nicely. The other thing I did was outsource my networking, right? For instance, I can't play electric guitar. I can't compose music. I can't play music. So many of us can't. So what do? We outsource our music, right? We listen to the radio or, whatever app gets us radio. Same thing with networking. One of the things I did was find 5 to 10 people with really good networks in complementary, non-competing fields that would send clients my way. My favorite was a former pro basketball player who knew tons of people. People loved him, but he didn't know how to close business. And so we started working together. I got to work with the owner of a small investment banking VC firm. He invested in companies, he raised money, and he needed someone like me to be on the ground coaching the founders. I've worked with HR consultants. I've worked with, and still do, actually, I've had about a 15 to 20 year relationship with the head of an assessment company who doesn't like to coach, but loves assessment. So we're a perfect match. There's all sorts of opportunities to outsource your networking. The other thing I did, like I'm doing now, it's educational marketing. I would back before COVID, I would do a lot of free seminars on behalf of associations. They would get me people. Now it's webinars. I would do research, as I shared with you. I'd create content to open doors with my intellectual capital. Yes, as Steve says in the chat, being an introvert is really not a disadvantage. It forces you to be smart. And to my credit, and to yours as well, I don't waste time with people who aren't going to buy. I don't have patience for tire kickers. whether it's for potential members of the Center for Executive Coaching or for clients in my coaching practice. The other two things that you can do if you're an introvert or have no network is just be a leader in two places. A nonprofit that you care about, get on the board. A lot of attorneys and accountants get almost all of their clients from one well-placed board position, but make sure you contribute. Help organize a fundraiser, help with a conference. Same thing with an association that you're going to serve. Get in there, be a leader. Don't just go to the networking meetings. Offer to help, whether it's about something related to leadership, where you do some research about members and present that research, or simply organizing an event or helping out. So people say, wow, I want to work with this person. How can I help them? And then finally, use LinkedIn, not so much just to get a bunch of contacts, not to spam people, but to meet interesting people and say, hey, can we talk about how we can help each other? That's it. Just go online to get offline. Don't spam people. There's tons of LinkedIn consultants that will waste your money. Not talking about that. Okay, so whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you can do just fine as a coach, building your power base and your one call away network. And if you don't know what to say, I'll share that with you too right now, and then I'll stop for a second and take some questions, and then we'll continue, okay? So the first thing, and a big mistake that people make when they're starting a coaching practice, is they just sort of throw it out there. If you know anyone, send them my way. Don't do that. Instead, carve out time with individuals in your network and say, hey, can we meet? I'm launching a coaching practice, or I have a coaching practice. I'd love to talk about how we can help each other. And then coach them, say, how can I help you? And be really generous. The best way to get an introduction is to make one. And then tell the other person about who you help and how you help them. Again, that's why you don't want to position yourself as a commodity coach. It's a big mistake. Right? When I tell people I help technology leaders who love technology but aren't great or very comfortable dealing with people, they think of people right away. And in fact, I'll even jog their memory. I'll say, who do you know in technology companies? I know you play tennis at this club. Who's in tech? Who do you know in your neighborhood? Who do you know at your church or synagogue? The other thing is I no longer go for leads. Maybe 20 years ago, you could go for leads. People don't want to be sold. They don't want pressure. I just say, look, I'm just trying to grow my network. I'm looking for introductions. You're saying, can you make an introduction? Who do you know that you might introduce me to? When they suggest someone, I just ask for their advice. So, why? Why'd you mention them? And my goal is that they make the introduction, although I'm happy to reach out. And when I finally do connect with this person, it's real soft, right? I just do this natural. There's nothing, I never want to feel like I'm pitching or being a salesperson. I just say, Joe suggested we meet. I'm so glad. Could we just have a short conversation to see whether there's opportunities to help each other? And then maybe we meet for more. And of course, I thank the person who made the introduction. On this one page, just from this one page, you could build an entire coaching practice. You don't need many clients. You just need a few doors to be open. That's what happened to me. Got a couple of doors to be opened. I did a good job, got results. And those clients wanted to help me and referred me to others, as you'll see soon. All right, we'll get to charging in a minute. Let me just take a break here and see, are there any specific questions? Now would be a good time to put them in the chat. One question I see is, what happens in a recession? And what I want to remind you of is there's always a recession somewhere. There's always a recession. A recession doesn't mean everybody's cutting back. There's always companies that are growing and there's companies that aren't. You want to think about the microeconomics, not the macroeconomics. If we thought about the macroeconomics, nobody would start anything. There's war, there's inflation, there's COVID. But, during the pandemic, there were tons of companies that were thriving. During the boom of the last decade, tons of companies were thriving, but some weren't. Capitalism is about creative destruction. So don't worry about recessions. What I found is that often the subject matter changes, right? It might be about growth. It might be about consolidation. It might be about retaining talent. It might be about recruiting talent. It might be about succession planning, success in a new role. So you just have to be ready. You have to have lots of different ways to help clients. Okay. Any other questions? Rocco, Rocco in the chat says lots of narrative about coaches not being experts. I don't know what you necessarily what your question is there. Do you mean there's narrative about whether coaches should or shouldn't be experts? What I'm talking about here is how you position yourself, right? And also when you coach with a client, some of them want you to be an expert. Okay. Somebody's asking a question about diversity in our program. You should look at our faculty, and I think you'll see a lot of diversity, and there's a ton of diversity among our members as well. But I can talk to you more in depth about that. Steve's asking, can I define the difference between coaching and consulting? Yeah, consulting is typically quite directive. You're giving advice. You're telling the client what to do. Coaching is more about having a dialogue and going where the client wants to go, letting the client lead, listening, asking powerful questions. You can still make observations, but when you do it in a detached manner and let the client define what would be most useful for them. Okay. All right, let me keep going. One more. Deborah says, can I speak to working with top dogs versus middle management? How to reach middle management marketing wise without the former? My advice is that you don't. It's really hard to work with middle management. Typically what I do is, my niche that I really love are these like middle market companies. And with middle market companies, I can reach decision makers, whether it's general managers of units or the very top. And they usually have pretty big budgets, consulting budgets, as opposed to human resources, which often has smaller professional development budgets. And when I work with them, often they'll identify a strategic need and they'll send me to, for instance, I worked with a multi-billion-dollar healthcare system that had low engagement scores, low employee engagement scores, but I was working at the top. And I said, I can help with that. And we ended up training every single manager in that organization about how to engage and motivate people. And then we followed up with coaching. So anyway, we could talk in more depth if anyone wants to reach out and discuss. So number 4, a big mistake coaches make is they charge by the hour. In our program, you're going to learn how to charge based on value, not time. Okay, this is easy for me because I came from the consulting world. The true consultants would charge based on a solution, based on the value of the solution, not hourly. And they would charge, just to get into a consulting engagement these days, the minimum would be something. When I started, it was $150,000. Now I talk to former consulting colleagues. It's like $275,000 just for a diagnostic in the consulting world. Here in coaching, I'm charging just $20,000 to $25,000 for a 6-month engagement. I have absolutely no problem quoting that and charging based on value, because if a client's not willing to spend that when they're spending so much more on consulting, I have no problem saying that's okay. I can find somebody else. So we're going to teach you not how to sell, not how to pitch, but how to coach the client through the buying process to understand how big their problem is. And that way you can charge based on value. So when a client comes to me and says, I think I need your help, or even if they say, I think I need a coach, I'm going to say, well, tell me about your problem. And if they don't have a problem or a challenge that's big enough to justify 5 to 10 times my fees, then I know we're not moving forward. So I just coach them. I'm detached and I say, let me ask you some questions. And I'm going to ask some logical questions to understand the financial implications of their challenge, what the impact is on employees, what their manager is saying, what's happening with their customers, productivity, their use of time, whatever it is. And I also want to get at how they feel. What happens if you don't do anything about this? How will you feel? Usually clients at the level you're going to want to work with will hire you. They'll say it's because of the logical issues, but it's really because of the emotional. They're frustrated. They're sick and tired of it. They have stress, headaches, overwhelm, and they can't stand it anymore. And I'll also ask the positive questions. What's the value of solving the problem? And then I want to know, is the money available? Right? I'll ask these questions up front, just detached. I'm not selling. I'm just coaching them to see if there's a fit. And it works so well. I quickly find out if someone's serious or not, and they respect me for asking these questions. So I'm charging the way that top consultants do. And when you're an expert and you know how to coach the client through the buying process, it just becomes so much more straightforward. You don't feel like you're selling. This for me was a second hurdle, right? My first hurdle was positioning myself. My second was I was scared to death of selling. And today I don't sell. I just ask, I just want to understand the why. Is it a big enough issue that you're going to want an outsider like me to come in and help you? And if it's not, I thank them. And what it's meant for me is I have to market more to deal with all of these people who are tire kickers, but it works out. So that's number 4. Please don't forget this. Whatever program you go to, don't charge based on the hour. You're going to be miserable if you do. You're going to be a true commodity. Okay, charge based on value. 5, you have to be ready. You need a range of solutions to pressing problems that clients have. Again, there might be an initial problem that clients come to you with, but if you want to be a trusted advisor, you have to be ready. And the great thing about coaching is it's a dialogue. It's a very powerful conversation. I know, and perhaps many of you know, I could coach anybody on anything, and so could you with proper training. The client doesn't know that. So what we're going to equip you with is a series of coaching solutions that address the most pressing challenges that clients have, right? If you go on our website at centerforexecutivecoaching.com, you can see videos that give you an overview of the different coaching solutions we have. That way, unlike other coaches who just keep saying, the same 20 stupid coaching questions, you're going to actually have a way to have more robust, deeper conversations with clients and really explore specific issues that they're facing. So you're going to get toolkits for things like, client complains, our engagement scores are low, or lots of people are leaving, or my team's not engaged, my team's not functioning. I have a lot of conflict. We don't know how to set a strategic direction, or we do strategy and it doesn't get executed. I want to be more influential. I want to communicate more powerfully. I have some relationships that aren't strong in the organization. It's hurting my ability to get things done. I want to succeed in a new role. We can't execute. I'm overwhelmed. Our culture needs to change. There's tons of these, including a whole career coaching bundle to help people in transition, and a whole bundle for coaching the growing business. You have to have a range of solutions. You can't just be a vapid coach who just asks the same 20 questions again and again, or clients won't keep you long. You have to have depth. That's why most of the people who come to us are already successful professionals. They've had experience. They understand what these issues are. Okay. And yeah, Jen's asking, is there a template to understand the method based on value? Yes, when you join us, we have pages and pages of business development guides. You'll see recordings that demonstrate how to do it. And there's even a couple of tools that give you some questions to ask for any situation, and then how to drill down based on the specific situation. And we can work one-on-one when you join this program. It's a boutique program. And so we can help you to do this, even role play with you if it's helpful. 6, not only do you need a range of solutions, you want to have a range of delivery methods. So I've interviewed successful coaches. If you look at the most successful coaches in the market, they don't just coach. At a minimum, they assess and coach. Many also have training programs. Many get called in to facilitate. In fact, with our program, we have a facilitation certification included with all our programs, specifically because clients ask me all the time to facilitate, not just to coach. You might do some advising if that's your thing, and you might speak. The metaphor on the right, I think it might be helpful. If you think of butter as your substance, you want to think about butter as your expertise. And there's lots of ways to deliver butter, right? There's bread, corn, pancakes, something in a skillet. And so think about that, right? The highest paid professionals out there, think of Marshall Goldsmith. He's probably the best known coach who's out there. And I shadowed him when I first got into coaching. I called him. He was very generous. He let me shadow him. I probably shouldn't say that because I bet tons of people call him now and ask. But back in the day, he was open to that. And what I realized was at the same time he was at a client doing coaching, he also spoke to a group of managers. He did speaking, he did facilitation, he does assessments, and so on. So you want to think about a range of delivery methods. And it's really important because I'll work with a client. Let's say I'm coaching a leader about something. He or she will say, Andrew, this is great, but I really want to bring my team together and have you talk to them. Maybe you can facilitate a workout session where we solve this problem together, right? So there's more work. Or as I said, I've worked with a number of organizations where they say, this is great. We need to train our managers on this, or we need to do a leadership academy. And before you know it, I'm working on a variety of issues. You see, the problem with being a commodity coach is that if the client has a need and you know you could help, but you're just a coach, you have to say no. You're leaving money on the table. So as you think about starting a professional practice, think about a range of delivery methods. Among them, for sure, you're going to want to assess. That could be interviewing people. It could be having off-the-shelf assessments, which we cover in our program. Super important, okay? So that's 6. 7, I want you to think about a portfolio of solutions. This is long-term, but this made a huge difference to me. And where I learned about this was when I was at a seminar and somebody was giving a presentation. He was selling like a $250 information product about something or other, and he was talking about it. And I said, you know what? I don't want to pay $250, but I want to see if I can meet with him and pick his brain. So I went up to him after and I said, you know, I'd love to meet with you, probably more for consulting than anything else. Can we talk? And what he said to me was brilliant. He said, Andrew, what I want you to do is buy my manual. It's $250, buy it. And if it doesn't fix your problem or help you with what you're interested in, give me a call and we can talk about coaching. Do you see what he did there? By creating a portfolio of solutions at different prices, he could make sure that I was serious. And you want to think about this long term. Initially, you know, just try to get some coaching clients, but at a certain point, don't think of yourself as just offering one-on-one coaching, right? If you can think about, like, if you see this graphic on your screen, let me show you the dimensions, right? Market size is at the bottom. Price is on the left. Access to you is on the right. The higher up you go on this triangle, the more you charge, the more access you give to yourself, but the market is smaller. You actually make more money at the top than at the bottom. The bottom are things that everybody wants. Like right now, I'm offering a complimentary webinar, right? And I put it out to my list. So it's a big market. And so we get some good numbers. It's free. Access to me, pretty good. I'll answer questions, but we don't have a relationship yet. Next up might be a book or a manual. Maybe you charge 20 to a couple $100 for it. So you'll have a smaller market. You give more access to yourself in terms of greater knowledge, a lot more detail. Then maybe you move to online self-guided programs, right? People get a learning platform, a member area. Maybe once a month you have a webinar where people can ask questions. Maybe they have email support. Then you can move up to licensing your content once you develop content from the other things you've created below. There's group coaching and facilitation and one-on-one coaching. Tony Robbins does this brilliantly and has for years. If you remember, he started with a book. What was his first book? Unlimited Power. And in the back of the book, there'd be a coupon to buy his tapes. You'd buy his tapes. I think Gunther Renker, something like that, was the publisher. And in the tapes, there'd be a coupon to go to one of his seminars. He might not even lead the seminar. Unleash your power. Unleash the power within, I think it was, Kathy. Right, so you go to the seminar, and then there's another coupon to go to his private island, right? He had this private resort in Fiji. Maybe he still does. And for 10 grand, you can go see him there. And then there'd be another thing, you know, here, for $1 million, I'll give you my cell phone. If you look at the most successful professionals today, they think about doing exactly this. It allows you to have a gauntlet so that if you have someone who's not interested, you can say, well, it seems like you don't want to pay for one-on-one coaching. Why don't you buy my book and get back to me? Or why don't we start with an assessment? If they're not willing to pay a few $100s for an assessment, I know they'll never hire me for coaching. The other thing this does is it makes me and will make you clearly be an expert because you have content. You know who else did this? The guy who wrote Good to Great, Collins. Apparently it's $100 grand for a day with him because of his best-selling book, right? Lots of people do this. Patrick Lencioni is a genius at this. He licenses a lot of his dysfunctions of a team content. So think about your portfolio. You don't have to do this now, right? Step one, get that first client. But long-term, you're going to reach a trading your time for dollars trap. This will create passive income for you, but it also just sets you up as somebody who's much more credible than your competitors. Okay, let me get to the final point, and then I have a bonus for you, which goes a little bit deeper. By the way, where should you start? I think we talked about this, but when you're thinking about your portfolio of solutions, like this could be overwhelming. In fact, I listened to a coaching recording today where one of our members was coaching another member in the program, right? You get to do that. We match you up with other members so you can accumulate coaching experience for the ICF and just to get better. And I'll review your recordings and we give you a really nice form to assess yourself. And the coach was sharing that she didn't know where to start. Like, where does she build content? So if in doubt, just create one educational product. We talked about this. One thing that solves a really pressing challenge that your client has that will be really interesting to them. Like my first educational product was about how nonprofit executive directors and boards can create strategy that actually gets implemented. Right. And it got me a lot of meetings because people read it and wanted to talk to me or invite me to speak. And the way you create it is simple. Just call up some decision makers in your market and say, I'd like to interview you. I'm not selling you about anything. I would like to just interview you. And then you create, whatever piece you want to create. Like, I don't love video. I like writing. So I did a white paper. And yeah, just start with a free product. Why not? A lot of people have done this in our program. Like, one of the things we offer is a specialty certification, like nonprofit leadership coach or technology leadership coach or diversity leadership coach. And to get that, you have to write a paper. We've had people turn that into books, trainings, videos. So it's really cool opportunity. And you can repurpose your content to different media. Okay. So if you want to be a trusted advisor, it starts with credibility. Remember, long ago, I showed you this hierarchy. Let me go back to it. You want to start at being a credible expert and solution provider because that positions you well. And then it's the relationship you form that leads to being a trusted advisor. And that's what I'm about to get to. Okay. So, and that's this eighth point here. And then I'm going to show you a little bit more depth and we can take more questions. Okay. So I referred before to the domino effect as the metaphor for being a trusted advisor, right? In this situation, the client's going to keep hiring you for their next challenge or to continue their coaching. They engage you to do other things like facilitation, training, advising, assessing. They engage you to work with their team. They refer you to others, both inside and outside the organization. So my business model is something like what you see here. It changes, but my business model is such that 5 clients support a very nice 6-figure practice for me. Very nice. And can for you too, right? So my typical client starts with a 6-month engagement. That's low for the market. 9 to 12 months is the average. 80% of clients renew for a second 6 months, sometimes at a lower rate, right? My initial rate is about $25,000. Sometimes they just want to meet monthly for check-ins. 80% will engage me for some sort of team assessment and retreat. We introduce you to an assessment in our program that's really amazing for getting follow-on work with a team. 75% or so, it's actually less these days. Before COVID, it was 75%. Maybe it'll go back up now that travel's back in, but they'll engage me to plan strategy, whether through a coaching or facilitation model. And a lot of times clients will also engage me to facilitate some sort of solution to a big problem where they're stuck. Like we have a change initiative, it's not going well. 75% refer me to another leader for coaching. 50% of the time, as I've shared before, I'm training managers about a specific leadership skill. By the way, our program includes like 400 pages of PowerPoint that you can adapt for training, not just coaching. And 30% something else that's interesting. Okay, that's the domino effect. This is how, as a trusted advisor, you don't have to do a lot of marketing. You don't need a ton of clients. You're not on the treadmill. That's the purpose of our program, right? We want to show you best practices in coaching. We want to show you how to go very deep with clients about their most pressing challenges, including work life, things outside of work, perceptions, confidence, but also the hard-hitting leadership challenges that they face every day. And then they're going to engage you for more. Okay, so if you want to be a trusted advisor, you want to get this thing I call the domino effect going for you. If you're a good coach and you listen well, it happens almost effortlessly, right? The conversation goes like this. It's real simple. The client sees value. And there's two ways to do that. One is the client thanks you or tells you this was really valuable. I always ask the client after any coaching session, what did you find most valuable today? Often right after you're hired, clients want to help you. And sometimes the client just shares a need. They say, I've worked with lots of clients where they say, I hate our culture, or we have strategy coming up. Do you help with that? And that's when I'll say, look, I don't want to take your time now, but could we carve out time and talk about either your need, or if they say they find something valuable, I'll say, look, can we grab a cup of coffee or talk via phone, whatever's right, to talk about others who might also find value from the work we're doing. If you have the courage to do that, you're going to have clients for a long time. After 1 year in my practice, I could trace back at least 50% of my revenue to my first 2 clients and the referrals they provided. Okay, so that's that domino effect. Let me take some time for questions, and then I want to talk to you a little bit more in depth about how to think about this. This is a little bit advanced. Of course, it assumes you have a client, but if I could plant the seed for you, I think it'll be really helpful. So let me just stop here. What questions do you have at this point, if any? Let me take a minute. I'll take this off record and pause for a second here too. Anybody have anything, or are we good? You want me to continue with this? Dana says, how do you determine your value? Your value is based on the value to the client. Value is in the eyes of the client. And so what we're going to show you how to do is to coach the client to determine that value with you. Norma asks, what if you don't have a coaching certificate yet? That's why you should join our program. We're going to give you the coaching training and the coaching certificate. Eric asks, how do you select the niche to promote? That's a process we talk about in our program. Eric, you know this because you're in our program. You have, there's some really nice worksheets that allow you to compare and contrast, but often your niche is right in front of you. In my case, I was working for a healthcare management consulting firm, so I couldn't compete with them, right? My goal was to start my own coaching practice or prove that I could do it. And so I had to spend every free day marketing, but I couldn't market to healthcare people because that would have been a violation. And so I started just looking in my community, and the closest thing to healthcare was nonprofits. And there were a lot of nonprofits in my community, and I happened to live in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. Of course, there were a lot of tech companies too. And so I just started speaking about issues and tailoring my talks to those 2 markets and started getting clients, right? So often it's right there in your backyard. Peter asked, what's my view of coaching as a side gig? I think it's great. Especially if you're a full-time employee and you're not ready to go out on your own. For instance, we have one member of our program, longtime graduate. He is number 3 at a $1 billion regional bank. He almost always has 3 to 5 coaching clients on the side. He loves it. And we keep talking. We talk every other week. Even now, he'll call me and tell me how things are going and ask questions. And his goal is to one day start a coaching institute for people in his industry. I think he's going to have to be laid off for that to happen, but he'll be ready. I don't think he's willing to, leave. He has golden handcuffs, but he loves coaching on the side. Okay. A lot of people are asking if I'm going to share the deck. It's really for members of the Center for Executive Coaching. I'll probably post it on our website under articles. So if you go to our website at centerforexecutivecoaching.com in a couple of days and click the articles, you should see it there along with this recording. Okay. So good. So let me get into, Deborah's asking, did I say I charge $20,000 to $25,000 for 6 months of coaching? That seems low for my level of expertise. Great question. I have been called a cheap date. Literally, I'm quoting a client, said, Andrew, you're a cheap date. A lot depends on your niche. And so just briefly as an overview for what pricing is out there. If you're coaching, small growing businesses, you're looking at the equivalent of $1,100 to $2,200 per month. Okay, I know one firm that just sold for like tens of millions of dollars that specializes in one small business niche. They charge $50,000 or $60,000 for a 2 to 4 year contract. At the highest end, you'll see coaches charge around $5,500 to $7,500 monthly, right? I'm just giving you the monthly rate. In my case, I just really love coaching that sort of smaller mid-cap growing company. And for me, 25,000 is plenty. And again, you have a good point, right? I'm in this really interesting spot where some clients have told me I'm too inexpensive and others find me too expensive. And so it's tricky, but what I want to do is get my foot in the door. A mentor of mine, and what I'm teaching you here, he said, don't get rich on the first engagement with a client, get rich over time with your clients. And over 22 years, that served me extremely, extremely well. Okay. If you already have an ICF PCC and you're interested in my program, even if you have an ACC, well, we give you a 10% discount. Okay, we can give you a code for that. So just reach out and let me know. All right, let's get into this bonus here. One of the things, well, let me tell you a story. What you're about to see is actually from a client engagement that I did. I worked with a consulting firm that wasn't getting a lot of retention with clients and had a lot of people who wanted to be partners but didn't know how to sell. And as a result of the content I'm about to show you, I think they were at 60 million when I started doing this. They got up to, they could attribute $10 million directly to this work. And a lot of their consultants were ready to be promoted to partner because they didn't even know how to think about this stuff. And now they do. So I want to plant this seed for you about how to think about being a trusted advisor. And it turns out that if you look at what consultants do in the top professional services firms, advisors, coaches in the top firms, they all do something like this when they have a client. And even if you have a small client, you can still do something like this. Okay, and the approach is here, but let me share with you. First of all, think about your goals for the relationship. With every client I have, I think like, what's the relationship now? And what would it mean to be a trusted advisor to them? Like what do I want this relationship to look like or feel like? Maybe it's, some sort of dollar value. It's the kind of work I'm doing with them, the strategic initiatives they have. Everything for me starts with what's my purpose? What's my why? Why is this client exciting to me? What do I want the relationship to look like? And how does that compare to the current state? If I know that, I know what I have to do to get there. Next, I want to make sure I understand the client just at a very situational level. It's fascinating to me that when I talk to coaches who are coaching at big companies, if I said to them, what's their stock price recently? Or what are their revenues? Or how many employees do they have? The coach often doesn't know. That puts you at a huge disadvantage, right? So before anything, you have to do your homework and think about the client from a due diligence point of view. What are their revenues, their profits, their employees? What divisions do they have? What are their products? What are their markets? Who do they compete against? What else is important to know? It's fascinating to me how superficial some coaches are, how they don't do this kind of work. If you know this, you can talk to the client at a much higher level and they respect you. And then I want to understand the client from the point of view of their business drivers, right? I want to learn. And remember, you have a relationship with the client. So a lot of this will come from talking to them. But what drives their revenues? Or if they're a nonprofit, how do they get funds? What drives donations? If they're government, what drives their initiatives? What drives profits? What drives growth? What drives market share? What are the drivers for their business success? I want to think strategically, right? If you want to be seen as a trusted advisor and in the inner circle of your client, it really helps to think like the CEO for a second. Just think like, what's their strategy? What should it be? What are their drivers? I don't have to recommend anything to the client. I just want to be aware. It helps me get in the client's mindset. I don't care what type of organization it is. Clients are always thinking about this stuff. There are two languages of any organization. One is strategy, business drivers, and one is the numbers. I don't care if it's government, nonprofit, for-profit. As a coach, it really helps to be grounded in that kind of language. So I'm going to understand the client. Do you notice before anything, I'm not thinking, what am I selling to them? I'm thinking, what do I know about them? Well, first, what's my goal? What do I know about them factually? What do I know about them strategically? And so now I can think, what are their top strategic initiatives? Again, I already have a client, so I can ask. If you want to get hired as a coach, think of yourself as a surfer. There's two types of coaches out there. The unsuccessful coach is a surfer on a flat lake, slapping their hands, trying to make a wave happen. In other words, they're trying to convince the client that the client has a problem when the client hasn't said they do. There's a lot of coaches out there now who are activists and crusaders instead of coaches. That's fine, right? If you want to change the way companies operate, that's perfectly fine, but that's not coaching. That's really trying to be an activist, trying to convince a company they should do something. The successful coach listens and learns about the company's top strategic initiatives, just like a good surfer goes to where the waves are. The wave is the company's strategic initiatives. That's what they care about, right? Maybe it's we want to grow. We want more diversity. We want to keep top talent. We need a succession plan. Whatever it is, if you can attach yourself to that, you're much more likely to get hired. You're surfing the wave instead of trying to create the wave. You see what we're doing here? Coaches don't think like this. Other types of professionals do. If you want to stand out, this is how you have to start thinking. Okay, so this helps me list now their most pressing needs from their point of view. Not what do I want to sell, but what do they want? What will serve them? What are they complaining about? What are they worried about? Again, too many coaches think about, how can I sell them coaching? How can I fix leadership that's troubled? They're making the client wrong. They're complaining. They're criticizing. That's not what you want to do. You want to start with, what do they care about? Nobody does this. I shouldn't say nobody. The top 5%, the successful coaches do this. Okay. And so now, anybody who's seen anything about like strategic selling or complex selling, right? What I want to do is I'm thinking, what is high value to them that's also high value to me? The mistake a lot of coaches make is they start with what matters to me, right? Like, I think leadership has this problem or that problem, so I'm going to pitch it to them. That's not going to help you. I'm going to start with, what does leadership care about? And where's the intersection of what they care about and what I do well? And if there's not a fit, that's fine, right? I'm not pushing anything onto them. I'm here to serve. And if there's an opportunity, great. If there's not, equally great, right? There will be, because I'm building a relationship and I'm not going to frustrate them by being a pushy vendor. Okay, so I'm going to find that match, and then I'm going to take a break. And now I'm going to think about, who do I need to know at the company? There's my client, but who else can I know? I can say to my client, who else do you think could benefit from the work we're doing? Or who else would be good to know in this organization? If it's a tiny organization, maybe it's just your client. If it's a nonprofit, often it's the client plus members of the board. I love nonprofits because they often have more money than people think. And if you get to work at the board level, you have like 8 to 15 people who are super successful, who might be on other boards and can refer you elsewhere. So I'm thinking about, who else might I know? Do you see how we shifted there? There's two things I'm thinking about. There's strategic needs and how I can help. That's the what, but also the who. Interestingly enough, that's a lot of what coaching is about. We think about, how do we help them on their issue, but how do we also coach the whole person? understanding the client's strengths, background, culture, beliefs, values. Same thing here, the what and the who. And so then I'm going to start to think about, how can I build key relationships in my client? What drives this person? How can I help them succeed? What might be a way to meet with them that they actually want, that they don't see as a sales pitch? What's my goal for this individual relationship? And how can I strengthen the relationship? I'm always thinking about this with my clients. I'm not pushy. If it's right, it's right, but I always have it in the back of my mind. It's a discipline that you want to have if you're going to be a trusted advisor. So now I can think about, so what are the key initiatives for whom? What's the order I can think about rolling them out? It might not work this way, but I've put it out there as an intention. It's on paper or it's in my mind. So I'm always listening for this. Often it happens much more quickly and more informally than what you see here. You know, a client that I've been working with says, we got to change the culture. And I say, that's interesting. Would you like to talk more about it after the session? And before you know it, I'm engaged to help them change their culture. And we have a whole coaching solution for that. So you'll be ready. All right. So for each initiative, I'm thinking, you know, who do I need to talk to? How do we make it happen? When do I introduce it? Maybe what do I listen for to know it's a good time to introduce it? And this is how I keep clients for a very long time. At the same time, you know, clients often tell me and will tell you why you're valuable to them, but sometimes you have to have some messages, right? What's the overall value I bring? For instance, you may not know about some of these other things I do. You know, here's what makes us unique. Here's my advantages or your advantages. And most importantly, here's, you know, I'm committed to you. I show that. I don't just tell them. And then what are immediate next steps? So this is a really good process. Again, it's proven. I've done it with other consulting firms, law firms. It increases revenue significantly. It builds better client relationships because it's all about serving, right? How can we serve the client on things that matter to them while building key relationships? All right. If you do these things, everything we talked about today, you're going to be really successful as a professional. You're going to be very different than most coaches out there. And I hope this demonstrates to you that we're operating at a different level than other coach training programs, right? We're really looking for already successful professionals because you're the ones who are going to succeed in this market. And when you join us, you can see what you have here. You know, there's just a lot of what we're known for is being really flexible, really practical, our toolkits, great people in the program. And you're always a member. You get ongoing support and access. Okay. I'm not going to take you through much more. I want to take any questions you have, but for those of you who aren't in the program yet, and you're serious about becoming an executive coach and getting executive coaching certification, you know, my goal, my intent here, why we offer this free content is that you see what sets us apart and what helps us to stand out. And you'll reach out, just reach out. We can have a strategy session anytime. Okay, I'm at centerforexecutivecoaching.com. You can click contact. You'll get my personal email. Even I think my personal cell phone is there. Leave a message if you get voicemail and let me know some good times to reach you. But even better, just reach out and let me know a good time for a meeting to see whether or not it's a fit, to answer any questions you have. I just request that you review our website first. Okay, with that, let me take it off record. Hold on just a second. And I'll take any questions you have. If you're listening to this recording, reach out anytime with any questions, okay?